是1999年成立于旧金山湾区。我们是一家非营利组织，主要是致力于帮助华人在科技领域发展。然后我们的华人社区呢，基本上集结了包括从各种创业者、领袖，然后公司高管，还有各大厂、中厂、大厂的骨干人士、工程师，还有对科技领域比较有热情的各界人士吧。然后我们今天呢，有幸的请到了 Google 和 VMware 的高管，跟我们一起探讨了一下产品创新和管理方面的话题。仲阳和艾伦人，艾伦人之前是 VMware AI Labs 的工程与生态负责人，也是中国研发中心总经理，现在是硅谷知名风投 3Q Angels 的高级顾问和投资者，也是我们 HYSTA 的咨询委员会的成员。仲阳在多个科技大厂担任过技术和商业高管，之前在谷歌云人工智能和行业解决方案做 VP，也在 VMware 担任过产品管理和工程副总裁，他负责的产品带来的每年的收益也超过10亿美金，数十亿美金。现在呢，仲也是几个非常知名的公司的董事会成员，其中包括 UiPath、SIRC Distribution 和 Cradle to Cranes 的董事会。今天呢，我们的现场也来了一些我们 Founders Club 的成员，今年这期以及往期的，欢迎大家。接下来我就把话筒和舞台交给艾伦和周。
好的，谢谢嘉宾。欢迎大家来到我们这个 Founders Club 和 HYSTA 的这个talk， 也非常感谢刚刚主持人的介绍。今天很有幸请到仲阳，也是我在 VMware 的前同事，在Oracle、VMware、Google 的Product 以及 Business Management 的这个leadership 上面是有很多的这个经验和分享。那下面我们就用英文来去进行今天的这个 fireside chat. So John, maybe we just cut into the chase to maybe have a quick recap of your very diverse and very versatile career from product management to business management. But I know that you started from something else. Maybe you want to give us some background on that?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Then I won't use the mic. So I think, I have been in Silicon Valley for almost 30 years. So it's a long journey, and I think it's not always necessarily a straightforward journey. As Alan has alluded to, I didn't start out my career as a computer scientist or something. My undergrad is actually in chemical engineering. So I did my undergrad at Caltech and did chemical engineering. Back then, my aspiration from a career perspective was actually become a professor. And after graduation, I went to work at Merck, which is a pharmaceutical company, for a year, and then went back to grad school. And I was planning to get my PhD from UC Berkeley. Somewhere along the way, I decided that research wasn't really for me, and I wanted to do something different. And I wasn't quite sure what that something is. At that time, there was opportunity to do some joint program between the business school and engineering school. So I actually went into one of those joint classes where we actually have half MBA, half engineering students, and we were actually doing consulting for startups. And the startup that I was assigned to was Inktomi. I don't know how many people still know Inktomi, but that was a company that was founded by Eric Brewer, who was a professor at UC Berkeley at the time. And they actually had the most advanced search engine at the time. Mm-hmm. And so we were doing consulting for them. And that was the first time I was exposed to the business world and thinking about product and so forth.
You mean better than Google?
That was before Google started. Google actually wasn't quite on the market yet. And it was actually later acquired by, I think, by either Yahoo or Google.
Yep.
But anyhow, so that was my first exposure to looking at product and looking at business. And I just find the whole thing very fascinating. And I thought this is something that's probably more suitable for my personality, for my interest as well. So I decided to switch from a PhD program to a master program. And following graduation, I went into consulting. Again, sort of in search of trying to figure out what's interesting for me and what makes me like excited and what am I good at. So in consulting, one of the good things about consulting is you get to expose to a variety of industries and also a variety of projects and products in a very short period of time. And that was sort of my first taste, really, in terms of, hey, how do you build a product? How do you build a website? How do you build a business, and so forth? And that was something that I really quite enjoyed. And so I said, product management looks like it's something that's quite interesting for me and something I'm pretty good at as well. So I went into product management, but I wanted to, not only for the consulting where you only own a project for maybe 6 months or a product for 6 months, then you turn it over. I wanted to actually build a product and from scratch or have opportunity to really grow the product. So I went into Oracle and went into the enterprise application side and to really kind of build out the applications. And this is where I kind of got a lot of the product management training. How do you think about enterprise product? How do you think about things at scale? And how do you build a business? How do you have go-to-markets and so forth? I was at Google. This is at Oracle. I was at Oracle for about 7 years or so, and then I was a little bit bored towards the end of my kind of a journey over there, and so I decided I want to go to business school and actually try to really kind of fill in some of the gaps I had on the business side. So I went to Stanford Business School, and for me, that was quite a great experience. Obviously, business school is a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of people. You get to see a lot of people and really talk about a lot of different ideas and learn lots of things. I think one of the things I took away was actually to think big, to dream big, to think about, be much more ambitious. I think, when I look at other people, I don't think that I don't have as much capability as them, but I didn't have as much ambition as they did. So that really kind of prompted me to think, look, you can actually think a lot bigger. And so the art of the possible and sort of think about what is the ambition out there. So it definitely sort of expanded my horizon from that perspective. So following business school, I actually went into investment for a while because I wanted to see what it's like to be on the other side, not on the building side, but on the investment side. So I did, I was working for fund of funds investing, so we had opportunity to invest into private equity fund, venture funds, hedge fund, et cetera. And after about a year, I realized that I'm actually still a builder at heart. I want to build something, and investing wasn't really sufficient for me. And then I was recruited to work at VMware. And so at VMware, I had actually quite a long tenure there. I had almost 10 years of working over there. And I had a variety of roles at VMware. And one of the roles I had was running the vSphere product management. So vSphere is the largest business at VMware, and it's really the category-defining product of kind of introduce virtualization to the world. And it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And when I took it over, the business was actually in the declining side. At the time, was kind of running against cloud and all this other competition, open source and whatnot. So in a couple of years, we turned the business around and made it into a growth business again. So that was a really great experience to sort of see that kind of turnaround situation. I also had opportunity to run in-house startups. So I get a chance to actually pitch idea to both VMware and Dell EMC, and as a joint startup. And so got a chance to actually get my pitch accepted and actually build a team from scratch and build a product and service from scratch in about 18 months or so. And so later I was recruited to go to Google Cloud. So Google Cloud, I had a chance to run the largest business at Google Cloud, which is running the compute and AI infrastructure and block storage business. So very large business and very complex business, and the business was was also growing for the cloud business, even though it was already multi-billion dollars, was still growing at double digit. So sort of dealing with those kind of rapid growth, definitely there's a lot of growing pains, and I have a lot of battle scar to show for that as well. And later I was asked to run the AI business at the Google Cloud. So smaller business, but obviously highly strategic for the company. And so it was really fun to be able to take all this great technology that Google has and really thinking about how do you commercialize it and really build into billion-dollar products and whatnot. And then so that's sort of a quick snap on sort of I consider my operating career. And if I look back, I would sum up my career on that side. I would think about it's really about, I think of myself as really three things, right? I'm a builder at heart. So I'm a builder of great products that's going to be really delight to the customer and impactful to the customer. A builder of great teams, because you need a team to help you to execute the vision and to make things happen. And finally, a builder of really sustainable and profitable business. Ultimately, the corporation exists to really make a profit. So those are kind of the themes that, as I look back, sort of capture sort of my operating career. Since the last couple years, I've been sort of shifting my focus a little bit more and towards the board and advisory side. So that's kind of as was mentioned earlier, I'm on a few different boards: public company board, private company board, and nonprofit board as well. And that's been it's a different perspective looking at the businesses, and it's been a really enjoyable and great learning experience for myself as well, to be able to see so many businesses in a lot of depth, but at the same time, really kind of looking at the higher level. So that's been something that's been it's been a great aspects and a great joy for me as well. So I think I think the life is not always a straight line, and I think you can look back in your career and looking at some of the pivotal points and so forth that was made. But I think think big and dream big.
Wow, that's an amazing career. I'm counting maybe half a dozen professions that each is full time. By the way, Jun and I, we do quite a few fun things together as well. She's also into sports and community work and all that. So I guess we can all ask her about time management in terms of juggling many successful for-profit and non-profit and volunteer activities. But looking back, Jun, what we hear is the pivotal moment. I would say sampling various professions, chemistry, biology, investment. When is a pivotal moment you think PM, right, product management? There are many builder roles, right? And PM is very specific. When is the pivotal moment or inflection point where you make the decision, say, this is it. I am passionate. I have strength. When is that? What is the story there?
That actually happened pretty early on in my career, right? And I think once a very wise man told me, as I was asking for some career advices, right? He said, "Look, if you can find the Venn diagram where it's something that you're really good at, and something you're very passionate about, and something the market actually demands. If you can find the center of those three circles, that's a pretty good career to kind of go after." Okay. And for me, product management was one of those things that I discovered pretty earlier on in my career. And so, while I had meandered, off product management from time to time, but eventually I do come back to it. And I think it also sort of launched my career into sort of the whole, really the general management and owning the business and P&L and so forth. I think for me, is like product management is something that I find it fascinating, and never really a dull moment there. Okay. And it's something that I'm pretty good at. And finally, it's really something that the market is in demand as well.
Right. That's a great insight. It's a three-way intersection of strength, passion, and demand, right, at the market. So then going into more product, today we're going to talk about product and business, right? And we kind of broadly define this as 0 to 1 the inception stage. In Jun's language, it's actually more scary. It's 0 to 100 million. So in our R&D world, we usually just say research and development, right? Innovation is just releasing the product is 1.0, right? And then there's the 100 million to 1 billion. That is still the mid-range to June, and then the billion plus plus. So we'll just say maybe use the t-shirt size is small, medium, large. And you do a lot of extra large business, right? Right. So tell us about the product management, the manager, the life of product manager. And then maybe we can go into the various stages of the product management life cycle.
Sure. I think, when you think about the role of product managers, I think it varies definitely from company to company. And I think for me, the core of product manager really kind of composed of you have to be able to answer a few questions really well. The role of product manager is really someone who's connecting what the market needs into translating into that product. In order to do that, there's a few questions you have to be able to answer. One is why, right? Why does the world need your product? And why is your product better than somebody else's product? And what is the value that your product kind of brings in, right? So I think the why is going to be really, really important to understand why that your product should exist in the first place. I think the other question is really about who. Who are you designing this product for? Who's going to be the user of your product? And who's going to be the buyer of your product? Often I see, sort of failures into some of these new products and so forth. You can trace back to say there wasn't really a very clear why. And there wasn't really a very clear who. And I think without both of those kind of understanding, it's very hard to be able to create a product. I mean, this is a very busy, I'm on the enterprise side, right? The enterprise side has lots and lots of product, lots and lots of company out there. If you talk to any CIO, they're overwhelmed with the number of products that's out there, with a number of, just kind of new things that's coming through, right? So they don't care about your product. It's really, what is your product going to do for me? What's in it for me? What problem are you solving for me? What value are you bringing to me? So really understanding that is really the key there. And then once you understand the why and the who, you can think about what is it exactly you need to build. Then you get into the whole MVP discussions and whatnot. But you really need to start with the why and what is the value your product is going to bring into the market, and can you articulate that value? I think once you have those things in place, you actually have a making of, the product management have the potential of succeeding. And even then, after that, there's still a lot of failure cases too.
Yeah. Maybe we'll just do a quick show of hands to see, first, how many in the audience here, how many people are full-time product managers? Okay, there's a handful. Okay. How many are engineers? Okay, so I guess you all are interested in product management. And then on the life cycle side, how many are you in the 0 to 1 or 100 million range in terms of the organization or companies you're in?
Okay.
Oh, okay, less than half. So I guess the rest is 100 million plus? Anyone? Okay, so the rest of you don't have business? Okay. So I guess more engineers.
I think that's expected, right? If you look at it, it's like even in the organization, right? You have a ratio between product managers. You have many fewer from product managers compared to engineers. That's by design. Right?
Yeah. So in my background is more engineer and also business management, founder and investor. Professional PMs are very hard to come by. I echo what Jun said. We used to interview for people from management consulting side, from architects, in business consulting. So, what makes a full-time professional PM? I guess that is the question I started with. Is that because it's in terms of proportion, it's a lot less than the engineering community. But we do see in large organizations, there are full-time professional PMs, and some of them actually turn into general managers running business. What makes the full-time product manager necessary?
Well, I think
many of the founders, many startups may or may not even have full-time
Yeah.
PM. Right?
Well, I mean, I think it's very common that for a lot of startups, the founder themselves
They're
can
acting,
fulfill
yeah,
the product manager role, right?
yeah.
Because if you think about the product manager, is they're really trying to decide on the product direction, right? And often in a startup, that's actually the company direction, right? So what is your product trying to do? Who are you trying to serve, right? These are the things that product manager would do. And then I think as the product getting more mature, product manager often will take on the role of sales as well, right? A lot of the initial sale is actually sold by the founding team. Your product manager is going to be very close to your first set of customers, working with the customer, helping them to succeed, and et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's like, look, the product manager sort of management, sort of this expertise needs to be filled somewhere, right? Sometimes it's done by the founders. Sometimes it's done by some engineering lead because they understand the market and customer well enough. And as your company grow, you are going to need specialization, right? You're not going to have the same person who try to do everything. That's going to be too much of a bottleneck. As you scale, you have to think about the different disciplines, whether it's product management. Later, you're going to think about product marketing. You're going to need full-time salespeople, right? You're going to full-time support people. You're going to need full-time training and partnership and so forth. As the company grows, these are all necessary functions. Initially, of course, the founder could be wearing many hats. They can do multiple things, but that you have only that's limits your ability to scale.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about I'll say the pivotal moments of an individual becoming a product manager, whether it's full-time or part-time. And you talked a little bit about MVP, that is really the minimal viable product and some say product-led growth, for SaaS and all that.
Yeah.
What is the pivotal moment for a product to be officially launched or on become a roadmap? Because initially you have many candidates, right, in the inception stage. What is the criteria or framework to start up a product?
Yeah. So, I mean, I see this quite a lot, right? And, whether in the startups or in the big companies, you also have lots of people pitching new product ideas and stuff, right? So there's a whole sort of what I call the product concept phase that needs to be kind of worked through. And when I think about the product concept phase, right, by and large, most of the ideas are going to fail, right? So in the product concept phase, what you want to do is actually you want to spend a lot of time thinking through your product and refining your product ideas so that your surviving product idea has the best chance of succeeding. So it's much cheaper and much easier to change your thinking at this stage. It's to change your kind of your PowerPoint, your docs, and so forth. Think about what your product idea is. It becomes more and more expensive as you're sort of going further down the road over there. So I ask my team and to spend a lot of time really in this stage to think about what is it your product is trying to do here. And sort of going back to some of the things I mentioned earlier, the whys and the what, right? I think when I think about the product, there's a million ways it can fail, right? But there's a few things that I see very commonly that people don't do, even though they should, right? Is really think about what is the value that your product is actually creating for the customer that you're doing, right? There needs to be a value creation. There needs to be a very clear articulation of the value that it's creating. So for example, if I look at vSphere as a virtualization, right? It's very clear. It's a consolidation play. You used to need 10 different machines to run 10 different applications. Now you can run all of them in one. That's a huge the cost saving. It's a huge management saving as well. So that's a very clear one of these. Okay. Hello? Okay. That's a very clear value proposition that you can provide. And a lot of times I see people create these product ideas. There really isn't a very clear value proposition. And there isn't really a clear value creation in that process either. And then the other thing I would say is that I always tell my team this analogy here, which is that make sure that you're creating an aspirin, not a vitamin. Meaning that there has to be a very acute and urgent needs for your product. Otherwise, people say, well, that's nice, but that's not urgent enough. I'm not going to pay money for it. So some people take the idea that, people say it's a nice idea. That is far from sufficient to really validate your product ideas at that point. And the third thing I would say is really around really market sizing. Make sure your product has a big enough market that's going to move the needle for your company or whatever the goal that you're trying to achieve, right? sometimes, like for example, I've killed products where the market potential was too small. So at Google Cloud, it's a $30 billion company from a revenue perspective. So for my product to help them move the needle, we need to be looking at $1 billion opportunity. So if I see a product that maybe even for wildly successful, we're looking at $200 million, it's not really worthy for me to go after that. And obviously for startup, that may be more than sufficient. So how big the market is going to depend on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. But really think about, do some back of the envelope calculation. What does it take for you to become a $10 million business? What does it take for you to become a $100 million business? And whether that's actually feasible or not. And then whether that's actually sufficient for, if you're part of the bigger company, whether it's something that's going to help them move the needle or not. So those are kind of things that you want to think about. And if you are, part of a larger company, I would say further you have to think about what is the synergy of this new thing you're trying to create with your existing portfolio, right? Your portfolio, if you're in a completely different line of business, that's a very expensive way to go to markets and so forth. So you think about, what is the synergy with the existing portfolio? Can you upsell to the existing customers? And can you leverage existing sales channels and so forth? Those are very, very expensive things to build later on. So during this product concept phase, you spend a lot of time to think through, hypothesize these possibilities so that hopefully what's remaining has a much higher chance of succeeding. And then also, I would say in this phase is also, don't get too married to your ideas, right? You need to have a very critical thinking, putting on critical length, looking at it to say, have the intellectual integrity to say, is this a really good idea or should we kill that? It's much better to fail at this stage to say, hey, this is the crappy idea, let's cut it. Rather than later when you already pour millions and millions of dollars and years and years of time into it.
Yeah, that's very nicely put. I particularly like the analogy of vitamin versus aspirin. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's from your biology and chemistry training. I guess the learning there is focused more on pain point than something nice to have. But in terms of the $100 million versus $1 billion, I have a slightly different take wearing my engineering hat, because I now understand more why the engineering department has constant, not fights, but heated debates with the PM team. Because in large organizations, there's this constructive, sometimes may not necessarily be that constructive, conflicts. Some people say it's innovator's dilemma, and sometimes it is innovator's necessary evil. Because until something can hit $1 billion, to tune maybe $10 billion plus, it may not be worthwhile for the large incumbent innovator to invest. So if you're in a large organization, whether in engineering or PM, you need to be aware of that. On the other hand, there's opportunities hence for the founders and smaller organizations, because then you can go for whether it's 1 million, 10 million, or $100 million opportunities. That is sometimes overlooked necessarily or stopped by necessity by large organizations. Which brings actually naturally to our next question at the end of the life cycle for products. Given that even for VMware, Google, a lot of products, some fly, some don't. When is a moment or criteria you decide to stop or kill or sunset a product?
You want to do that as early as possible. So this is why I put a lot of emphasis in the product conceptualization phase, right? Because once you have customers on that, it becomes a much more painful process to try to deprecate a product and whatnot. So you want to do those things earlier, right? So you can do beta, you can do labs and evaluations and so forth to really kind of try to really any new idea you come in has tons of risk associated with it, right? So in those process of doing the product concept and doing the MVP and so forth, what you're really trying to do is de-risk the product, right? Whether the product is whether risk is on market side. The risk could be on the technology side. You're using some technology that may or may not work at scale, right? So you want to actually understand those things. And there could be risk just on the execution side. You need a partnership with someone in order to make that happen. And if you can't get that partnership, right, then that you can't really take off. So you're trying to really de-risk your whole product idea throughout this entire process over here. And there are many, many gates. There are plenty of places where you can kill these products. And that's a very healthy thing to do because you do want to that there's enough new ideas coming in. And as I manage a portfolio, I think a lot about what are the new things we're going to do, right? I have my cash cow business. I have my business that's going to be growing. I also had to think about beyond this, what's my next horizon and things. And then there's a whole set of things that you want to do innovative approaches. You want to look at new ideas and so forth. And by design, a lot of those ideas is not going to succeed, right? Because if every idea kind of flies, you probably didn't take enough risk. Mm-hmm. So, and it's totally fine to kill those ideas. It's just in a large company, you have to be cognizant about actually pruning those ideas. Otherwise, all of those things will become actually product. They may have very few customers, but customer nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And it becomes very expensive to try to deprecate a product once it's going to actually have customers. So I kill products all throughout this process. And then particularly before we actually launch the product, meaning we're going to publicly announce the product, before we actually got customer on board, that I really put a lot of emphasis on there because if you get that wrong, it's very expensive. It may take you like 2 years to build a product. It'll easily take you 2 years and 3 years to unwind the product later on. And it's also very negative for publicity for the company, for the customers and whatnot. And so definitely something you try not to do if you can afford it.
Okay, yeah, that's something a bit new to me. So in addition to killing maybe $100 million, $1 billion product, you would actually kill something that is being announced but not necessarily launched.
Yeah, if at some point you realize this is a wrong idea, right? I think it's much better to recognize those ideas. It's a bad idea earlier, and because every idea you're pursuing is opportunity cost. You're not pursuing something else, right? So if there's something else that's actually more pressing, then you need to actually kind of be ready to kind of do that. I mean, once the product is $1 billion, you're not killing that product. Yep. You want to sustain that as long as possible.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I guess for the audience, it's probably more relevant to the early stage product management in terms of 0 to 1, 10, and 100, whatever the size of the market is. So let's dive into a little bit more on the role of general manager, which I understand is more business manager. When you have launched a product and reached a certain level of commercial success, how do you bring it to the next level or next order of magnitude in terms of scale?
Yeah. So the role of general manager, I think a lot of technology companies tend to have that. And then the definition of that also kind of varies a little bit from company to company. So in my books, I think about general manager as sort of maybe there's 2 or 3 distinguishing characters. One is that the general manager should have P&L responsibility, so profit and loss responsibility, where you're actually running the business. You're thinking about not only the top line, the revenue side, you got to think about the cost side as well, and thinking about the profit margin and so forth. So there needs to be enough levels of financial understanding of what that actually looks like. And then with the GM model, a lot of it's really about ownership, right? The buck needs to stop with you, right? You need to be making those decisions. A lot of times they're hard decisions. You got to make that decision. You can't just delegate up to your CEOs or whatnot to kind of make some of those decisions. The second thing about general manager is typically you're running a cross-functional team, right? You might have product, you might have engineering, you have product marketing, you might have sales, you might have support, customer success, and so forth. And some of them may be reporting to you directly. Some of them maybe report to you as more a matrix organization. But ultimately, you're responsible for the investment into each one and every one of those kind of groups. And you're responsible for the overall health of the business, right? So you're the one who's reporting numbers at the end of the quarter to your CEO. Hey, how's my business? Did I meet my plan? Did I not meet my plan? Those type of things. And so I think when I think about the general manager role, I think the whole notion about buck stops here and the profit loss is actually a significant departure from a functional functional leader kind of role, right? In the functional leader kind of role, a lot of times you'd be like, I need more people, right? I want to grow my team more. And sometimes it may be true, sometimes it may be just, hey, I want to grow my 5 of them over here. When you're actually in the role of GM manager, you got to think about every person I'm adding a cost, right? Am I actually going to generate enough revenue and generate enough profit to actually counteract that? And if I do have extra headcount, do I put in sales? Do I put in product management? Do I put into engineering? Do I put into partnership and so forth? So you're thinking really at a much higher level about how you're allocating your resources and how you're managing the business. And the general manager role is also very much a role where the communication influence is super important. Because especially in the matrix organization, you have teams who don't report to you, but ultimately you need them to actually execute your plan, right? So you need to be able to communicate effectively with them and be able to have sufficient influence so that you can actually get things done there.
Okay. Yeah, so Jun talked about the transition from PM to GM, General Manager, which is more of a generalist role. So I also want to ask, what is a pivotal moment there from a more specialized PM leader into a more general P&L, multifunctional management role? What is the inflection point there when you make that career kind of change? Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a PM perspective, I think that change was is rather smooth, right? Because even as PM, a lot of times you're focused quite a lot on the business side of it. You are looking at the P&L. You may not be responsible for it, but you're certainly looking at it. You are thinking about the routes to market. You are thinking about, hey, the partnerships and so forth, right? So I think it goes from a just the change is that now you're actually taking full responsibility and accountability for those things, and so that's going to change. I think for someone who might be coming from the engineering perspective, sometimes that could be a little more challenging because a lot of them haven't read a P&L before, haven't really thought about kind of the partnership, and haven't really thought about a lot of more external facing type of activities. So that's usually I see there's more of a change and a learning path from that perspective.
Okay, so going back to your Venn diagram for the general manager, do you see is a strength, is it passion, there's a demand for easier for the PM role to, from career development point of view, or increase responsibility to get to the GM role, or from engineering, or from marketing or sales role into the GM role?
Typically, the path to GM is actually from either product or engineering. It's very rare it's coming from outside of that. Yep. Because partly with this, the GM structure, especially in technology companies, is set up. It's very much set up around a product portfolio. So you need to understand the product portfolio to be able to do this. Yeah. So this is what I typically see.
Yep. Okay, so this brings to our next, or maybe the final segment is more about people, because we're talking about product and numbers, right? Top line, bottom line, and the necessary skills to make a good product manager and business manager. The general manager obviously is a people manager. How do you deal with talent? What are the tricks in hiring and development?
Yeah. So I've hired and developed a lot of people in my career, and I've thought about hiring quite a bit, especially what are the metrics I will look at, what are the criteria I will look at, and so forth, and definitely kind of through trials and error, right? And I think people is what makes the business successful. So I think I spend a ton of time sort of thinking about on the people side. How do I hire great people? How do I retain great people? How do I develop people? Am I putting the right people in the right places? Am I giving them enough challenges and stuff? So when it comes to hiring, right? When I look at hiring, whether it's hiring product managers, engineers, or other disciplines and stuff, I typically sort of look at it from 6 different dimensions, and I call them my A, B, C, D, E, F. So A is for attitude. So I look a lot at the attitude, and so I want to look for people who are driven, self-aware, and who and then depends on the discipline. There's also kind of specific characters that I will look for. Like on the product manager side, I will look for people with customer empathy, and people who are naturally very curious, and who actually likes people. And so those are some of the sort of attitude traits. And if I were looking for people who are helping me with the data, like a data analyst or some kind of operational role, I want that person to be OCD. I want that person to really look at the numbers and really understand the numbers. So when I get the numbers from them, I know it's accurate, and I can make a decision based on those numbers, right? So those are kind of some of the things. B, for me, is about brain power. I think you're always going to want to hire a great athlete. The world, especially around technology, changes so quickly. Whatever you have learned, in your undergrad, in your graduate school, and so forth, will become outdated, and you're always going to be learning new things. So I need to look for people who have a lot of capacity to learn new things, and to be able to synthesize information, and to be able to come up with strategic making strategic choices and strategic decisions. So those are things that I look for on the brain power perspective. C is for communication influence. Especially for the PM type of jobs, it's such an influence and a communication heavy kind of job. Whether you are trying to, work with internal teams, whether you are presenting to customers or presenting to others, communication is such a big part of this process that you need to be able to present effectively, be able to influence and making decisions and helping people make decisions. So those are kind of things I look for on that side. And then D is for domain expertise. So that's whatever domain, right? If we happen to be infrastructure, it's infrastructure domain. If it's AI, it's AI domain, and so forth. And E is for execution. It's about getting things done, right? I've definitely hired people who are super smart and really good, but cannot execute. And that's a problem, I think we need people who can get things done. And F is for functional expertise, right? So I'm hiring somebody for into a PM role, into a product marketing role, into a partnership role. I want to make sure they actually have done this before, understand what that function actually does. And then if I'm hiring a leader, right, then I need to make sure the leadership qualities and so forth are in place. So those are kind of A, B, C, D, E, F that I look for. And in the development process, when I develop people, also I'm looking at against those set of metrics to see what are they missing, right? Hey, do they need to do some more on the domain side? Do they need to work harder on the communication side and so forth? What's holding them back?
Okay. Well, from a Venn diagram to 6 alphabets, that's almost too many for me. But then I realized Google's parent company is Alphabet, so I guess she's learned quite a bit of Google. So jokes aside, how do you see the advice for entry or mid-level PMs? How do they accelerate their career? And how does an engineer pivot to PM if there's interest?
Yeah, so I think, if I were to start any kind of in any new role and so forth, right? And I think the same advice I would give to sort of entry level is that there's a few things you need to do, right? You need to get to know the customer, get to know the market. You got to bring the outside in view, right? So that means you got to spend time with the customer, with the markets and so forth to really understand the why, right? The other one is really getting to know your products, right? You got to know what your product does or don't do and be able to be expert of your product. I mean, people come to product managers to really get that insight. So you need to be able to have that insight, understand your product inside and out, right? And the third one is really people, right? Get to know the people that you're going to be working with, whether it's an engineering team that you're working with, whether it's a product marketing, whether it's a sales team, and so forth, right? You are going to need all of these people to build rapport with them to actually be effective in your job. And the customer is part of this, customer's partnership and so forth, right? So those are kind of, I think the 3 things I would always do starting any kind of a new job is to pursue those kind of stuff. And then start formulating, what you can do in this area. And I think for people who are kind of starting in their career, and I think it's incredibly important to really build a reputation and build credibility. PM is as much a science as it is art. So a lot of times you need people to be able to follow you. even if you don't have necessarily all the great data and so forth, right? So you need to have a track record, and you also need to build credibility so that people would actually listen to you, and to be able to, to realize the vision that you have kind of painted out there.
Yeah, that's, I guess, very helpful, and I'm sure audience will have a chance to ask their own kind of questions on career. So the next question is how, if you have a job rec, we call it opening, right? When do you decide to develop and groom whoever's on the bench to fit that role? Or when do you decide to look outside for experts somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a good question. So generally, my preference is to promote within, to grow within, right? If you think about it, you want to reward people who's been there for a while, who's done a great job, to make sure that they can see the path to move forward, right? When you have people who are internal as well, I mean, they've already know the people, they know the product, they can hit the ground running. And I think also, when you interview people, no matter how good an interviewer you're talking to people for a few hours, right? And whereas the people you work with, you see them day in, day out. It's a devil that you know, right? So you know what the strengths are, you know what the weaknesses are, you can figure out how to complement that. There's probably two situations I would actually go outside. One is that if I don't think that I have anyone internally that's going to be ready for the role, then the time that I need them for, right? So for example, I need to hire a senior director for a particular area. And as I look through my benches, right, and it might be 2 years away, and I can't wait for 2 years, right? So therefore, I'm going to bring people from outside. The second area I would bring is sometimes you need specialized skills or specialized DNA to do certain things. Then you would actually bring in that from outside. So for example, when I was at VMware, as we were looking to really kind of go from an on-premise side business into much more the cloud business and cloud services, we really didn't have people who have sufficient cloud experiences, that particular DNA of how to operate a cloud services. And that needs to be brought in from outside, so we can actually get, getting the learnings, right, and understand the gotchas to help us to kind of make that smooth transition there.
Yeah, I guess some of the insight there is maybe if Jun is hiring first, looking inside, maybe for the career move within an organization is first to look also inside because there's more opportunities in terms of existing relationships and rooms for exploration. But moving to some of the non-work related activities that is full-time, right? Obviously, Jun's been very active in advisory and board roles, but I would like to ask maybe on the community side, when have you started giving back to the community and also working not just for the full-time employer, but for other organizations? And how does that help with your career and your development?
I guess when I do those kind of things, I don't necessarily think about it's going to be helpful to my career. Yeah. I'm doing it because it's a cause that I believe in, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been involved with this nonprofit organization called Cradles to Crayons for the last almost 3 years now. And as I was looking at sort of ways to give back to the communities and so forth, I was looking for causes that's close to my heart, that where I want to actually give back. And so one of the causes I felt very close to was actually helping children. And Cradles to Crayons is a 20-year-old nonprofit, and what they do is helping children in need with their clothing need and other essentials. And as a mother of two, right, it really breaks my heart to see that there are children in the world who don't have those the type of necessities in there, and whereas my own children definitely has way too much stuff, if anything. So I mean that's kind of one of the causes. And as I was talking to the organization, I felt like there was a well-run organization, and they were also embracing going from a physical sort of distribution and donation type of world, going into a much more digital side of things. So they were looking essentially their own digital transformation. So I was happy to be involved with an organization where I not only can help them financially and with my time, but also kind of help them with my expertise as well, to help them to be successful in that digital transformation. And where I felt like that impact is, it's something that's gratifying to myself. Yeah. And so those are kind of things that, like I think, you don't do those things for me, it's like I do those things because it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's good to see, to bring some good to the world.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of the giving back for nonprofit, right, into communities, Jun's also been a very successful Chinese and Asian American. So what do you say to, I guess, the Chinese and Asian Americans, right? Particularly for the product management profession and also the engineering, the technical profession. What are the cultural context? What are the things that are Asian American culturally strong in, and what are the areas that that can be improved in this PM profession?
Yeah. I think generally I don't see enough Chinese Americans in this profession. I think usually like there's just not very many, and so I encourage more folks who are interested in this discipline to actually try it out. Right? It's a great way to get into kind of get into the decision making sort of level. And it's a great way to be able to really learn a lot of different things, not just sort of building a product, but building a product for what, for whom, and how do you build a business, right? For me, like I like to operate things at scale. I like to build businesses. I like to be able to build successful and profitable businesses. So that's what excites me, and so therefore I do this. I think for folks who are interested, I mean, I think product management is one of those disciplines you sort of learn on the job, right? There's very few, it's not like there's a major in undergrad it's called product management, right? So you don't really learn that, and I think a lot of people don't even know what it is. I see people who are confused about product management versus project management versus product marketing versus program management and so forth, right? So there's a lot of misconceptions about there. But I think for me, it's I've been in this field for 20 plus years, and it's been very gratifying, and it's also been intellectually very stimulating for me throughout. And so I encourage people to try this.
Yeah, that is very encouraging, and I want to echo that because I used to run the China R&D for VMware with close to 1,000 people, mostly engineers, maybe a handful of product managers. So I actually organized the product management trainings, and the organization we signed up for is actually based in India. Name is something like Product Leadership Institute. So, and as we know, some of the groups, Asian American groups, particularly more English proficient, you see more representation in the product management, right? So here's a challenge, maybe for the non-English speaking minority groups, but here's equally, if you look at Jun's successful career, an opportunity for Chinese Americans and Asian Americans to get ahead, particularly because it is, I would say, well underrepresented.
It's very well underrepresented
in the PM profession. So so it's good to have Jun as a role model for the audience who might be interested to go into the PM role in the future. So in summary, maybe I'll ask Jun to give maybe some reflection on lessons learned or advice that you would give to the young Jun 20, 30 years ago before you go into PM. What are the things that you could have done? What are the key things that you want to reflect on?
Yeah, I think I think about your career as a product. Think of yourself as a product, right? So you think about the product market fit, right? You yourself as a product. What market are you good at to fit in there? And you think about also how do you grow your product market fit? How do you expand your product market fit, right? Think about like, hey, maybe today you can only do, maybe you can only do certain jobs and so forth. Think about how do you expand that so you can do bigger jobs, more jobs of those kind of things. Thinking about how do you make yourself as a product more desirable and more in demand so that more companies are interested in you or more groups are interested into you? And how do you grow that? I think to me, it's like I take a product management sort of lenses to your own career management as well. And I think, one thing I think I alluded to earlier was, for me, I think, probably the biggest thing I took from the Stanford Business School was actually the mindset change, to actually think a lot bigger and about what I'm capable of achieving and so forth. Because sometimes I think when you sort of have a mindset limitation in terms of what you can or cannot do. And when you actually expand that opportunity, expand out the realms of possibility, you can actually go a lot further.
Okay. Well, with that, I understand as impossible is nothing, right? And thank you very much for Jun's sharing, and I'm sure we can open up the floor for further questions, but let's give a round of applause for Jun. Thank you.